So I'm just getting out to this call. It's actually a repair that I wrote up. If you guys have been following along, I wrote up an inducer motor and a pressure switch on this unit. I was going to hopefully do it that same day, but I've got a couple other calls I had to go out to that day. Of course, we got a bunch of snow overnight, so now I'm going to be doing the repair in the snow, but just want to get them up and going. So I'm going to start out pretty much the way I do on all these is before you get out to site or at the parts house, I definitely recommend checking your equipment, open out the boxes, make sure everything looks right, no dents, dings, anything like that. Make sure the wheel freely spins. And I bring in this up just because it happened to me once, is make sure that your wheel is secured onto the shaft of the motor. I put one in one time and ended up coming back a couple days later because the wheel fell off the shaft. So that's just something I recommend looking at. Same thing with the pressure switch, just open it up, make sure everything looks good, any obvious damage. Next I'm going to be pulling off the pressure switch, which is pretty easy. It's just held in by these 2 screws, and then you got these 2 wires here. I always try to match up what they say on here. There'll usually be some writing. I'll try to match it up on the new one. Obviously make sure that your reading on your pressure switch is correct. So this one's negative 0.33, so I just want to make sure my new one says negative 0.33. You can see this one has had some high temp caulk. I'm not sure if this is factory. It doesn't look like it because it looks kind of crappy, but I'm not sure if this is factory or if someone did something on this in the past. I do see here that there's a gasket. Unfortunately, this new one did not come with a gasket, and I'm pretty OCD on always wanting to put in new gaskets, but with the weather right now and how cold it is, I mean, we got snow everywhere, so with how the weather is, I brought some high temp caulk that I'll definitely seal everything back up if I need to. Some other advice on that is, don't go crazy with it. I mean, I'm hoping to be able to reuse this gasket. I'm going to take this thing off pretty gently, hopefully be able to reuse it, but if I can't, put it on gently. Early in my career, I put some on, I put it on way too thick, and it actually kind of seeped down into the wheel. The system worked for like a day or something like that, and then I had to come back. This is on a residential call years ago. Had to come back, and that caulk had gotten all over the wheel, and basically it wasn't pushing enough air. The draft was awful, and it wasn't closing the pressure switch. So I just give that advice out. I mean, I ran into it. I don't know if you guys will or if anyone's ran into that or not, but it was definitely a pain in the ass, embarrassing. I had to buy a whole new inducer motor. People were without heat for a couple of days, pissed off the customer, pissed off the owner of the company. But yeah, I was very, very green at that point. So I'm going to go ahead and get all this stuff out of here and get the new parts in here and be able to test it. And then one more thing to add here, I mean, you can see it just have 2 wires going to the motor, which is pretty easy. Just kind of follow them back and plug them in to where they're going, so that should be pretty easy. I do recommend trying to use zip ties to get the wires out so they're not resting against anything hot, melting, causing shorts or issues in the future. These guys here have this little twisty tie that I can just kind of undo and redo, so I don't even have to really use a new zip tie. That's about everything I could think, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. And again, I think it kind of goes without saying, always make sure you have the power off. I mean, I still have the disconnect off from when I wrote up the original issue, but just always make sure you have power. Check with a voltmeter. Just make sure, be safe. Obviously, you don't want to get zapped. So I have the new pressure switch in here. A couple other things you kind of look for is, I mean, before you even come back or before you order your parts, I'd recommend just checking the ends of these this tubing here. Sometimes you'll see, more so on the inducer motor, you'll see it get really brittle and dry and hard there. I usually hope that I have enough excess I can cut like, maybe a 1/2 inch or so or off the end of it and put it on. But if your tubing isn't long enough, you're going to have to pick up more tubing. I mean, it's something I recommend just having some extra on your truck, or if you ever don't need some from a different job, just keep it on your truck, because it definitely can save you in a pinch for sure. This tubing looked good. I mean, I inspected it before, so I knew it was going to be good, but I highly recommend. I've been burned on that in the past as well. This new pressure switch, I can tell, is probably redesigned or something like that. I mean, this is the old one, that's the new one, a little different. Leads me to believe that maybe they had some issues with that old style, so I'm kind of glad that I decided to do that with everything. Got that in there, so next I'm going to start with this, doing this inducer motor here. So I got the new motor in. As you can see, that old gasket was just toast once I pulled it off, so I ended up using the high temp caulk. I used a fine bead, so you can see it just barely kind of sticks out along the edge. That's pretty much exactly what I wanted. If you run in that same situation, I highly recommend cleaning off every little scrap of that insulation. That's another thing I've seen when pressure switches aren't proving. I pulled these apart and just seen the wheel like caked with insulation to the point where it's not pushing the air to make the proper draft. So just highly recommend that. And then if you're in the other situation where your insulation is toast and you don't have the high temp caulk, I highly recommend doing something or coming back or picking up the right stuff, because if you use no gasket, what I've seen is these will leak air in here, and it just basically makes a lot of condensation in this whole electrical compartment, burner compartment. And I've come back and seen it like where it's literally dripping water inside, and just, you know, I've come out to blowing control boards and all sorts of other stuff just from a ton of condensation being in the burner compartment with this thing running with no gasket or on it. So I'm going to get ready here to fire it off. I always like to test everything from the thermostat just to prevent any other issues that I might run into. So yeah, I'm going to go down to the thermostat, turn this thing back on, go to the thermostat, put it into a call for heat, and go from there. The other thing that I've always kind of say at the end of all my videos is make sure, I like to write somewhere on the panel inside the unit, or put a note inside the unit just stating what has been replaced. As a service technician, I absolutely love it when, you know, I find notes and have a little bit of history of what's been going on. You know, you can catch some of these problematic things if it's like the same part keeps failing, stuff like that. It's always great, even when you know you're going to a new site and another company was doing that, and then you have a history. It's kind of like one of those unwritten rules that a lot of techs will do to help each other out. So everything fired off just fine. Everything looks good. I double checked my new draft on this inducer motor, and it's well above my negative 0.33. So everything looks really good. Should be good to go. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already, please subscribe, and stay tuned for more videos.